This is lovely.
Thank you.
It's really, really nice.
So this is the cafe. We've been open a few years now. I can't really remember when we opened. 2017, I think. And we had the Brennan brothers down from Kerry, who sort of put us on their TV show.
I'm not surprised because it's so pretty. So for this week, for the Organic Matters podcast with the Irish Organic Association, we're doing something just a little bit different. So we're here in Shankill Castle in Kilkenny, and Reuben is with me, the owner. Reuben, you have a farm, obviously, and we're going to chat about the organic farm in a second, but you brought me into the cafe. And so, when exactly did you open it, and I guess why did you want to open it?
Well, yeah, I just mentioned the Brennan brothers there. We did that RTE show years ago, and they sort of wanted us to do something, and we said we'd been thinking about doing a cafe, and then they sort of sent the cameras down, and we had to sort of commit to actually doing it. So that meant us that we did it. Myself and my wife Ellen, we had an idea of what we wanted, and we went ahead with it. It took longer and cost more than we expected, but as usual.
That happens actually with farm ideas, doesn't
And,
it? But it's so beautifully done. I mean, you've got all this beautiful kind of wooden, kind of country kitchen style furniture, and then huge stone flagstones, and then I guess your coffee layout as well. I mean, it's kind of like a really, kind of highbrow artisanal cafe, but on a little rural farm. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, thank you. Well, yeah, it's the coach house. It's the old coach house, and we're in the stable yard of Shankill Castle. There was room for like 7 horses, and then this room was for the coaches, and more recently, sort of the old cars. There's the old garage pit there, and the cafe counter was the old tool counter.
I was wondering because it's a kind of a huge wooden structure.
Yeah.
Yes, that makes sense.
So yeah, we used what was here. Same with the furniture. We used what we had, and yeah, it's sort of what we wanted to do was a sort of a farm to fork experience. So we try and grow as much of the produce that we use in the cafe ourselves, and during that process we converted to organics, and so the cafe just is an outlet for our produce. We sell excess produce just at a little stall we set up when we're open.
And what's feedback been like from customers? Because you're just on the outskirts of Kilkenny cities. I mean, do you get kind of a lot of custom?
Yeah, I mean, obviously 2 years of lockdown, there hasn't been many international tourists, which we had sort of always gotten a little bit of that, because Kilkenny draws a lot of tourists from abroad, so we've always sort of piggybacked off that a little bit, and then my mum's a painter, and she's exhibited worldwide, so her paintings are always on display here, and that's always a good way for her to show her work as well. So we've growing up here, we've always had people coming through to either give tours of the castle or the gardens or the artwork. So I suppose having a cafe just meant that everybody always has to stop and have a cup of tea or something to eat anyway. So it was just a way of bringing all our things together. And then when I started farming and then doing more sort of garden or horticulture, as you could call it, we just had more products that we could sell. And the cafe just was always the outlet for that.
I guess I'm wondering, because a lot of people out there listening maybe have farms and outhouses, and a lot of people kind of think, oh, will we open a cafe on the farm, or will we do this, that, or the other? I mean, how you're kind of grimacing there. So what would you say?
Oh, it's not for the faint-hearted. I mean, my wife was really integral in like the menus and keeping it, she always ordered the best of ingredients, the best of everything, and our coffee, our milk, everything was always organic, even before we were organic ourselves. I mean, the cafe itself isn't certified organic. It's not a vegetarian cafe. We don't like to label ourselves as a cafe. However, we do use a lot of stuff, and we very rarely use meat in our cafe, and if it is, it's our own, or so.
It's difficult.
Yeah, but it's not an easy task to open a cafe. There's a lot of background paperwork, a lot of keeping customers, keeping staff, keeping our it's like any business, it's not easy. But and you're not on a main street, like no farm is. So you don't get that footfall that, a cafe opening in a town would. So you have to be different, and you have to, and yeah, lockdown showed us that, we had a core of sort of local people who were our regulars or became our regulars, and we sort of figured out what they wanted, I suppose, as much as we could, and kept them. We've been, lockdown was difficult because you don't know when you can open, when you can close. So the last 2 years have been up and down with opening hours, which is difficult. You have to sort of have a time when you're open and stick to that, so that people get used to it. But that's something, hopefully from now on we can
regulate a bit more easily with lockdown lifted and that.
Yeah.
I'm wondering though, say in terms of percentage of income, farm versus cafe, does the cafe generate kind of 20% of income or half of income? No idea. It's worth keeping open though, is it?
I'll definitely figure it out after a little bit more. I mean, since going organic, the farm income has changed a good bit. Like you don't have those input costs, which is great. You don't get the sort of the size of the animal or the yield of the corn compared to conventional, but you get the higher prices. So I think it totally makes sense to be organic from that point of view. And people talk about, well, how are you going to feed the world? And I suppose there isn't an answer to that. Except we'll start with feeding ourselves and our community and our families, I suppose, and then we'll but it is an amazing. Like the garden, definitely. I don't know about incomes, but we've certainly be able to produce a lot more on a little amount of, like, this is probably about an acre total that we just have in vegetables and fruit, and like more than we can use.
Will we head out to the garden and have a look at it? This is really lovely.
This is the wall garden. There were originally 4 acres of wall gardens here. We just use an acre. The rest are just sort of walled paddocks. There's some apple trees in one of them, that's all.
It's so neat, and you have, I think, are these kind of apple trees, espalier pear? Okay, yeah.
Pears, sort of our goblet-shaped pear trees along that wall there, the south-facing wall, which is also lined with brick, which was just to hold the heat, and soft fruit, gooseberries, black currants, tayberries, loganberries, raspberries are all sort of not even up yet.
It's so neat. I'm quite envious, actually. Is it just rhubarb. You doing it, or who's keeping all the vegetables?
There's a few of us in here that sort of tackle it. We've got a new girl starting tomorrow, which is great as well. We're trying to. I mean, we've changed a lot over. We've had a little bit of advice from people and trying to keep things separate and have. So this is all our sort of perennial beds, our asparagus and our sea kale and our artichokes, and then our rhubarb is all down there. Then this is our cut flowers bed, only the sweet pea in at the moment, but we'd in the summertime we'd have a lot of flowers that we just use in the cafe sometime. I mean, that's something we will start selling more of, hopefully.
You've got a bumblebee going around as well. Yeah. So the farm itself, how big is it, and how is it split up between tillage and beef?
Well, first of all, it's split between 2 locations. It's 16 miles between, so that's brings its challenges. So there's about the beef side of it is the grass side. There's probably about 70 or 80 acres in permanent grassland, and then the rest is all sort of tillage and silage ground, which is in a rotation now. Just all red clover silage is what I use. I just make red clover silage.
And is that to kind of balance out your demand for feed intake for the cattle then?
Yeah. I suppose, it keeps. So I've only recently sort of sorted out my rotation. Got it. It's my 4th year being organic, 4th year doing tillage.
So you're still working out your nitrogen fixation and your feed intake and
still trying to, I went on as many farm walks as I could recently, and that was always my question to the farmers. What's your rotation? How do you figure it out? And the red clover, how important that is. And I'd been doing red clover from like the beginning when I went organic, and so I have decided now I'm going to do 2 or 3 years red clover. So I think 2 years red clover, then 1 year wheat, and then 2 years oats, and then back to red clover for 2 years, and then I think that's how I'm started. I mean, I got my soil samples back this year, so the wheat was quite hungry and it took a lot out of the ground. So, but because the farm is in 2 locations, I'm wintering cattle on one farm, and that means all my dung is over there. So, so then luckily I have a source for dung here near this farm. So, that's trying to get that sorted is part, it's as important as anything, getting the dung right and getting
because that's your fertilizer. That's your natural fertilizer, essentially.
So, I mean, there are other things you can spread that people will try to sell you, and I'm sure they're great, but for the moment I'm just going to see how I get on without them, and just fertilizer or farmage manure and lime, and the rotation, be it the red clover.
Was it scary though, because you switched to organics in 2018 and you took the plunge? You had been doing tillage, but you took the plunge into organic tillage as well. Was that scary?
Yeah, I hadn't done any tillage apart from a few acres here and there for whole crop silage. Oh yeah, but it's exciting as well. Like I found it, you're learning it, like, and I rely so much on my contractors and on neighbours and on farm advisors, just and my family, my cousins and my, they're just constantly asking questions about what will work or how will this work. And like, so 1 year there was a lot of my first year I did barley. I think 47 acres of barley. It was in conversion, so it wasn't going to go as organic. But there was sort of a bit of weeds in one corner, so I just went into the mower, and it was just the same sort of time the red clover was coming in for the first cut, and it was just at that cheesy stage, so I just whole cropped around 5 or 6 acres of it and put it in the bottom of the pit, put the red clover on top of it, and it was just an idea that the contractor had, and we just went for it, and it worked out really well. So I mean, but the following years we didn't do it because, well, we didn't pit it. We just decided to bale it the following years because yields weren't as high as the first year, and it's too expensive to pit it if the yields aren't too high. And
so are you growing wheat and oats now? So yeah. Where are they going?
So the oats to Flahaven, so that works well, and the wheat is for the little mill in Bennett's Bridge, and that was all down to consumer demand. The little mill contacted me because they had been growing this heritage wheat conventionally, and they didn't think it needed to be grown conventionally because it grows so tall, and it didn't need the fertilizer and all that. So, but the customers, the bakers, they were asking, why isn't it organic? So Rob Moss asked me to grow it, and so we tried 5 acres, and then last year we tried, I think, up to 20, and this year we're doing 25, and now I've sort of tried to work it into my rotation, so I hopefully will be able to provide them with at least that amount or something similar
You sound like you're really kind of enthusiastic about it. And I'm wondering, because I mean, you did go to Kildalton Agricultural College, but also you studied sculpture in St Martin's in London as well. So how did the two marry, or when was the moment when you were like, you know what, actually, I want to be a farmer?
I always felt I was a farmer. I always felt I still think I'm an artist. So yeah, you don't you just, like, I don't know, your art in the art world, the art world and the farming world are like miles apart, chalk and cheese.
But are they though? Because at the same time, I think there's something in farming that you kind of appreciate the beauty around you, and I suppose especially with organic farming, there's kind of this balance. I don't know, that there's something in the natural balance. I don't know. It's an appreciation maybe.
But what I'm saying is they're like chalk and cheese. The communities are, but they're actually very similar. Very similar lifestyle, in a way. You're
the penury.
Yeah, I mean, that you're your own boss. That's the say. From day one, no one's there to. I mean, okay, some people probably have people to pull them out of bed in the morning, but you have to get up and do it yourself, also you're, as a farmer, you have to be creative. You have to be able to mend things or fix things creatively, because you know it's not, your margins are so tight. You're not going to buy a new whatever every time something breaks. You're going to have to fix it or get on with it or find another way around it. I mean, God, I'm sure a lot of artists use baling twine as well.
I'm sure they wish they had some, actually.
But yeah, I've always felt lucky as a, that I had farming upbringing, being in the sort of in my art, around my arty friends, because I felt I knew how to use tools earlier on. Like a lot of people were in art school and they didn't really have much other experiences, and I felt I brought a lot to the table being a farmer.
In terms then, I guess, because you mentioned consumer demand, and there's always this fear that consumers won't pay for organic food. How have you found that with the cafe and, say, with your experiences with the wheat?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's obviously growing and that people are becoming more aware of it, and this year is going to be, very, integral, different and tricky for everybody. I mean, the costs of everything have gone up so quickly, and demand will go up from all sectors, I'm sure. So it's sort of, I mean, it's obviously scary what's going on in the world, but you have to just be ready. And I mean, I'm told that consumer demand has gone up a huge amount for organics the last few years, and I can sort of see it, I suppose. Yeah.
And then, I guess, long term, what's your vision for this place?
Well, I mean, yeah, there's always loads of ideas of what we want to do. I mean, we're always doing events here. We had a little event this morning. Then this afternoon we're just sort of planning for another event that's happening in the summer. I mean, there's loads of options. Like a place like this, a lot of people might go down the wedding route or something like that. But we haven't. We've sort of decided just to, keep it more arty. We run an artist residency program. We have the cafe, obviously. We have sort of a lot of car events and stuff like that come through. We've tried a music festival before. I don't know, because we're just trying to. I don't know. There's a few plans, but there's nothing set in stone yet.
There's a beauty to that flexibility, though, isn't there? And I guess
maybe.
the same thing of thinking on your feet, like you were talking before.
I mean, I don't know. Everything has changed in the last few years, and then myself having had a little girl now, and it sort of changes your life a bit as well. So you're singing "Nurse Your Arms" on the way to school
Peppa
every day.
Pig.
Yeah. I mean, your life changes. So any plans that I've made have changed greatly over the last few years. So.
But organic is going to stay as a staple.
Definitely. Like, I wouldn't go back. I mean, I had the organic plan done up since 2015, and just the scheme closed, and when it reopened, it sort of for a few weeks, 2018. Like November 2018, it opened for 4 weeks, and I was ready. Yeah, I was ready. I knew I wanted to go organic for years. I knew I didn't want to go in without the scheme, which just offers a bit of extra support. But I'm glad I went in when I did, and I'm glad I brought all the tillage ground in, and I'm glad I ticked the horticulture box as well and brought the wall garden in, because I've learnt more growing vegetables about everything else than anything. It's totally different to any other farming. It's a lot of farmers wouldn't see growing onions or potatoes as farming. It's sort of like something you do at the back of the garden but it can really provide, like, financially. It can do well. So that's the exciting thing for me. The garden. So my plan is to do slightly less beef, more tillage, and more vegetables, and never get rid of the beef. It's always going to be Like it's a suckler herd, you know. Oh, there's a pheasant. He's sitting there under an apple tree. He's been following me up and down on the lawnmower, like literally up for. Never get rid of the cattle because they're part of the landscape here for longer than any of us, and then, but they'll, and you need the dung, and you know, so that's sort of my way of sort of just lower the amount of cattle, and increase the amount of cereals for human consumption and vegetables for human consumption.
Okay. Reuben, thank you very much for that. And if anyone's in Kilkenny, I highly recommend that they come out, or that they make it part of their summer trip planning for this year. But for now, you've been listening to me, Hannah Quinn Mulligan, on the Organic Matters podcast. And if you want to find out more information, go to www.irishorganicassociation.ie.